So this video isn't about homophobia in general. It's more about why people who dress in a way that's openly gay or openly queer might be the subject of negativity and harassment. You know, we all know that people are targeted for the way they feel about their gender and for their sexual orientation. But what I don't think is talked about as much is the queer aesthetic, why people are targeted for dressing queer, for dressing in a way that's particularly openly gay, and what the reasons might be behind that. You know, we all know that people are targeted for the way they feel about their gender and for their gender presentation and for their sexual orientation. But what I think isn't talked about as much is the way that people are targeted for their aesthetic, for having a particularly gay or particularly queer aesthetic in terms of the way that they present themselves out in the world, in terms of the way that they dress, and why, the reasons why that might possibly elicit negative responses from some people. So firstly, I'm probably going to have to be a bit clearer on exactly what I mean by queer aesthetic. So obviously it's different for everybody. It's not something that you can really box up and say, okay, this is what being openly gay looks like, or this is what the queer aesthetic looks like. But, some examples of it might be dressing in a way that's particularly flamboyant. It could be dressing in a way that's sort of traditionally considered outside the norm for that particular gender. So let's say it might be if you're male, or if you're born biologically male, it could be wearing dresses and skirts. Or for a woman, it might be, for a woman or for someone who's biologically female, it could be dressing in a way that's perceived as being particularly masculine. It's actually really hard to define the queer aesthetic, because what I think is so amazing about it is that it is so creative and it's so varied and it's just really different for everybody. And I think that's the really amazing thing about it, is that you just can't really specifically categorize it because it just varies so much. I think for some people who pass someone in the street or who meet somebody who isn't conforming to gender norms, to the gender norms as they know them to be, it threatens everything that they know. I think when we're small, I know that this happened to me. You kind of try to figure out, okay, what's this all about? What's this life thing all about? And you're trying to understand, why am I here and what's expected of me? What am I supposed to do? And I think that some people are actually taught, we know that some people are actually brought up thinking that, this is what's expected of you as a woman, this is what's expected of you as a man. And so what ends up happening is they make certain, all of the choices, or at least a lot of the choices and the decisions they make in their lives, actually end up being in part based on what they think is expected of that particular gender. So what they think is expected of them as a man, are they supposed to support the family? Are they supposed to, be responsible and take on all this responsibility? Or, if they're a woman, they're supposed to dress in this particular way. They're supposed to be beautiful and attractive to the opposite sex. And so they end up basing certain decisions in the way that they develop on their own gender. And so when they come across somebody who is outside of that, who doesn't fit, who's actually subverting those gender norms, then it feels like a threat because it threatens everything that they thought. In so many ways, we're taught to fit in. So we're taught to blend in with other people, with our peers, with our friends. Even in the workplace, it's like, we're taught not to stand out too much. And so I think that, certainly if you're at a young age and you see someone who's dressing in a way that's outside of that, especially if, maybe it's a bit different now, but not everywhere. Of course, we're much more understanding now about gay rights, LGBTQ plus rights now, but that's not the case everywhere in the world. And I think when you see someone who's dressing completely outside of the norm, but they're also clearly just dressing for them. They're dressing in a way that's completely authentic for them. And so you see that. And if you've been taught to do the opposite, to just try to blend in whatever your personal feelings are about it, that you're taught to not really have personal feelings about how you dress and how you present, you're just taught to try to blend in with your surroundings and dress in a way that's expected, then you see someone who's not doing that, who's just dressing for themselves, and you just think, what the hell is going on? Way too many people are taught that they should just be like everybody else. And, historically, people have always been afraid of other people who are different. And, let's be realistic about this. This isn't just about fear. It's about being uncomfortable around people who are different, but I think it's also at times, obviously there were so many other things that come into it that, I've not really discussed in this, like it being an excuse for hatred, an excuse for intolerance, an excuse for violence. There are so many other factors, but I do think that people are taught to be uncomfortable and fear people who are different. And so it can be perceived as a threat only in the sense that it's just not what people are used to being around, and it just threatens everything that they thought about their lives, about society, and about, what they thought about gender. I think, sadly, there's also a fear of being associated with it. So if you've been taught that the way that you dress and present and the way that you are and the way that you feel about your gender is the only way to be, and you see someone who doesn't fit into that, then I think there are a lot of people who are afraid of being associated with that. They know that those people are a target because, being different often makes you a target. And they don't want to be targeted in the same way. Now, obviously, I just want to emphasize again that, I'm not saying that these are the only reasons of why, people within the queer community, or even people who dress, with a particularly queer aesthetic, are targeted. Obviously that's not the case. There are so many other, really negative factors, tied into anger and violence and hatred of people who are different. Obviously there were so many other factors to it, but I just wanted to address this because I think it's interesting, just the fact that, we've been taught, I think, to be afraid of being different, be afraid of being ourselves without permission. Obviously the world is changing, and I think for a lot of people it feels like it's not changing fast enough, especially depending on what country you're living in. But I just think that everyone can learn so much from the queer community, because people within the LGBTQ plus community really do show everybody else, what it means to really embrace who you are, to really be yourself, and to have the courage to be yourself without permission. Obviously I've touched on some pretty sensitive topics in this video today. For anyone who's seen any of my other videos, that, I'm really passionate about various topics within the queer community as someone who's queer myself. And I'm also, really interested and really passionate about style and fashion. So I just really wanted to talk about, the queer aesthetic and why some people might respond to the actual visual element of it the way that they do. But yeah, if you like the video, then please leave me a comment, or if you want to talk about it, leave me a comment as well. Or you can go onto my Instagram, I'll leave my handle down there, and you can go onto it. And if you'd like to see more of my videos, then please hit the subscribe button, and I will talk to you again soon.